how much you love us, Lord, how much you care for us. Lord, we return thanks to you, Lord, during this time, for you're an awesome Father. You're a God that tendeth our soul. Bless us, Lord, this morning. As your word will come forth, Lord, I believe it will change the way we think. It will change the way we live, oh God. It will cause us, Father, to look and to see, Lord, the way you say things. Give us this mentality, Lord, that you're a God that orders our steps, and that you have plans to prosper us, not to harm us. Plans that we may, Lord, grow and, Father, enjoy the blessings that you bestow upon us. I pray a special blessing, Lord, upon the congregation this morning. Lord, as they realize a deep sense of God, of you in their lives this morning. Amidst all the fun and the frolic, help them to know, God, that you came, that you're the reason for the season. You allowed your Son, O God, to walk the face of the earth, to be born unto man, to die as a man, and then later, Lord, to be resurrected and to be seated at your right hand. Thank you for your graciousness. Thank you, Lord, for your thoughtfulness, O God. Bless me as I handle your word. Use me, Lord, in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Praise God. You may be seated this morning. How many of you are excited to be in the house of the Lord this morning? Let me see your hands. Amen. Okay. I can see some tired hands this morning. They don't go all the way up. I'm going to welcome Kevin, his little daughter, and his friend with us this morning. I'll ask them to stand with us. Stand. Amen. Amen. Once again, just have a wonderful stay with us. You may take your seat. Have a wonderful stay with us. We can see people are on holiday. You can feel it already. When we were coming up yesterday, we saw just cars on that road to Durban, as if this was the end of the world and people were trying to run away from something. That's how crazy it was. So, if you're wondering why the malls are empty, know that all your comrades are there in Durban, filling up the malls in Durban. I was in Shelly Beach on Monday. And amazingly, there was literally no space in that shop. That's how people were. It was like a shopping frenzy in a spa. I mean, it was just unbelievable. When I proceeded to Flagstaff later that day, there was a standstill. We stood in the middle of town for 40 minutes. Nobody moved. Nobody went anywhere. So, maybe on Christmas Day I'll touch on that. Maybe I'll use that as a springboard for my message. But what possesses people at this time? What makes people just lose all sense of decency and direction, that they just want to get into this place and shop till they drop? I mean, it was like a frenzy, you know. If you look at it, when sharks are being fed in a fish tank, you would see that there's just a frenzy. There's just everybody pushing and jostling just to get to that little thing that the shop is offering. So I can tell you, it's not a pretty sight. And some of us were caught up in that. And I thank God that some of you were prudent enough to shop early, so that you don't get caught up in this madness. Okay. On that note, I want to greet every one of you in that sweet and lovely name of Jesus Christ. We are absolutely tired from all the traveling, and we had to do a wedding in Durban. Hence, we didn't go down for a holiday per se, but we went down for more to do the wedding. And we had to be back with you this morning because the elder is now left to also go and enjoy a holiday. So he's going for a holiday, and so I couldn't leave you by yourselves. Some of you won't go to church on Sunday morning. But somebody had to be here, so we're glad to be here this morning. And I'm just going to continue that message that I preached last week about much, much more, because that's what God desires for us this morning. Just not more, but much, much more. I spoke to you regarding David in his quest in his life to become king. He was a warrior, then he got appointed king. He wouldn't say there was a quest for him to become king. He was God's automatic choice. Remember when his brothers were lined up? God obviously, through the prophet, said to his dad, listen, you got these kingly looking men, priestly looking men, prophetic looking men, but there's one man that's missing. Where is he? He says, oh no, you must be talking about my younger son. He's actually tending to the flock. He's a shepherd boy. Now, what would you be doing with a shepherd boy? And amazingly, he said, well, that boy needs to be here. Because I came for him, literally. I'm putting this in my own words now. Just for you to get the picture. That means I didn't come for you, any one of your sons, Jesse. I came for this special lad. There is a special blessing that I want to bestow upon this boy. Today, your shepherd boy is going to become a king. Little did we realize that that was a precursor to the birth of Jesus Christ. Where was he born? In a manger, but in a stable, right? In a place where there was not enough room. How God in his infinite wisdom would allow this traveling couple that will be able to come and ask for room at the inn and only to be told to go and live, just go, and there's just one place for them, and that is there in that stable, in that manger. And so, how God in his infinite wisdom allowed Jesus Christ to be born through those humble beginnings. Why? The same process. He wanted us to see this example. That this shepherd boy, when everybody looked at his ruddy, handsome face, David was one of the most handsome guys, handsomest guys around. And when they saw that, this ruddy face, all full of dirt and the marks of tending to the sheep and fighting off and staving off wolves and bears and lions and all of those things, this handsome boy was going to be called the king. So, the point I'm trying to drive home this morning, even as I give you a slight synopsis of what I said last week, is that this boy would become the king, and there was a destiny attached to this particular young man. The prophet spoke in 2 Samuel. Let's just quickly look at the text this morning. 2 Samuel chapter 12, reading from verse 1 to 12. And Jehovah sent Nathan unto David, and he came unto him and said unto him, there were two men in one city, the one rich and the other poor. The rich man had exceeding many flocks and herds, but the poor man had nothing save one little ewe lamb, which he had bought and nourished up. And it grew up together with him and with his children. It did eat of his own morsel and drank of his own cup and lay in his bosom and was unto him as a daughter. And there came a traveler unto the, what is that? Hey? What? Rich. Okay, these balls are in the way. Unto the rich man, and he spared to take of his own flock and of his own herd to dress for the wayfaring man that was to come unto him. But he took the poor man's lamb and dressed it for the man that was to come to him. And David's anger was greatly kindled against the man, and said unto Nathan, As Jehovah liveth, the man that had done this is worthy to die. And he shall restore the lamb fourfold, because he did this thing, and because he had no pity. And Nathan said to David, Thou art the man. You the guy. You're getting angry with him, but you are the guy. Thus saith Jehovah, the God of Israel, I anointed thee king over Israel, and I delivered thee out of the hand of Saul, and I gave thee thy master's house, and thy master's wives unto thy bosom, and I gave thee the house of Israel and of Judah, and if it had been too little, here's that text coming out, and if it had been too little, I would have added unto thee such and such things. That means I would have added more and more things. Another translation says, much, much more. Wherefore thou hast despised the word of Jehovah to do that which is evil in his sight. Thou hast smitten Uriah the Hittite with the sword, and hast taken his wife to be thy wife, and hast slain him with the sword of the children of Ammon. Now therefore the sword shall never depart from thy house, because thou hast despised me, and hast taken the wife of Uriah the Hittite to be thy wife. Thus saith Jehovah, Behold, I will raise up evil against thee out of thine own house, and I will take thy wives before thine eyes, and I will give them unto thy neighbor. And he shall lie with thy wives in the sight of the sun. For thou didst secretly, but I will do this thing before all Israel and before the sun. May the Lord bless the reading of his word and also make us more aware that God is aware. Amen. When we look at that introduction where God says, you thought that was little, but I wanted to do much, much, much more. If you think that the palace that I gave to you was small, you think I gave you Israel and Judah and that was little, man, I would have given you much more. And so I spoke last week about the boundaries that we set for ourselves, and that God does not want us to set those boundaries, because he's given us a limitless domain in which we need to reign and rule over. And we find that we just become a law unto ourselves. In the meantime, instead of us having much, much more, we go and set a tiny boundary. I also spoke from Chronicles chapter 4, verse 20, where I spoke about the prayer of Jabez, and Jabez's prayer was, Lord, extend my boundaries. And then I also spoke to you about, in that particular scripture, the meaning of Jabez was sorrowful, being born in sorrow, in pain. And if you look at that prayer, I said that if you look at Jabez's prayer with intent, you will understand that Jabez himself says that God must take away that sorrow. That means, like I said in the book of Revelations, I think it's chapter 2, where the Bible says, he that overcometh, I will give him a new name. Hallelujah. Amen. Are you with me this morning? So as I started to recap for you, as I begin to recap for you this morning, that a lot of the things that we have set boundaries where God hasn't. God wants you to have much more. For some reason, you want to have little. You know, we have this funny thing. I want to share this with you. This is just my own personal thoughts. But we have this thing about buns. I mean, people go to the nth degree on a wedding to go and put a bun. And man, that just, for me, it just makes them more ugly. Makes them ugly, rather. In fact, they're beautiful, but they get ugly. I used to hold my mother's hand, and I used to cry when I was a little boy. Mom, please take that ugly thing out of your head. Our mom was a beautiful woman. Sorry for those ladies who do love buns. I'm not... But I mean, people go to the nth degree even when they make their face and whatever. For that particular day, they go to every reason why they want to look ugly. And when I thought about this scripture, David went and stopped God in his tracks. When God wanted to make him beautiful, he wanted to remain handsome. You know, when you speak about men being beautiful, that means they are extremely handsome. That's beyond handsome. That's beautiful. Now, when God wants to make you beautiful, you want to remain handsome. When God wants to give you more and much more, you want little. And that's exactly what's wrong with us by setting boundaries and having, he could have been content with having every country in his hand. He could have been a sovereign king over many lands. He could have gone and said, God, grant me my forefathers that were in bondage in Babylon. I want Babylon. I want the richness. Remember, Babylon was one of the most wealthiest places in the Middle East. He could have said, I wanted Babylon. I wanted the richness of Tigris, 2 rivers, Tigris and the Euphrates. He said, I mean, it was one of the wonders of the world, the hanging gardens of Babylon. You might have heard of that. Now, Nebuchadnezzar got it. And he actually wasn't even a worthy king. He was such a cruel king. But God even changed his heart. And so, God will give your inheritance to heathens. Like he says here, he's going to take David's wives and give them to the neighbor. Man, that's the last thing I want God to do. I love my wife too much. You understand? But if you look and read in between the lines, what God was saying, that possession that you hold near and dear to you, I'm going to take it away and give it to the heathens. And you know what? When you go look at David's earlier prayer, what David was saying, he said, he was speaking so powerfully in one of his psalms. And he says that this is the promise of God, that he will give the heathens for your inheritance. Isn't that powerful? Now, that's what God gave him. Gave him that promise, that he would give the heathens for his inheritance. Whatever that your neighbor owns will be yours. That's how powerful you were. And what you now have succumbed to because of your ill deeds, you have now gone in and allowed God to take your wives and give them to the neighbors. And just remember, this was in the days of David. When you hear wives, don't use it for this day and age. You only have to have one. I don't think in those days you could live with many, but now you can just live with one. That is the summary of what I spoke about last week, and then I also said God's dream for you is special. Jeremiah 29:11. I know that the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to give you an expected end. Right? That's what God had in store for you. But what you did was, you decided to make your own happy ending. You decided to go in and have your own life carved out according to your own feeble mind. And man, that is exactly what is wrong with us today. Is that we made this God too small in our eyes. To such an extent, when he says, look, like he said to Abraham, look out as far as your eyes can see. That extent of where your eyes see, that I've given to you. He says, look at the grains of sand. As many are the grains of the sand, that's how I'll make your offspring. Man, that speaks about much, much more. That's the plan that God has for you. Didn't have a plan like Lot had. He looked at the plateau and he saw the most luscious grazing fields for his animals. One of the reasons that God separated Lot and Abraham, his uncle. It was the laborers were fighting for grazing lands. So God says, well, that's what's in your heart. Abraham was a fair man, said, you go and choose first. Go and choose what you want to see. What you see, you can have. Because you see, that's a promise. And this will be in your vocabulary, church. And listen to me carefully. I'm saying this not just coincidentally. I'm saying this because God planned this for me to say this to you this morning. Is that you will be telling people how to get wealthy because of the wealth that you carry. And you know what? Right now, you're looking and counting your few black farthings. You may just have 2 black farthings to rub together. Some of you don't even have that. But you're looking at it and saying, this pastor is saying, I have the ability to be able to speak prosperity over somebody else. Now, what does it take for you to claim that kind of? God's already determined it for you. It's just your faith that is so small that you cannot believe that you'll move from a 1-bedroom flat to a 3-bedroom with a double garage and everything else. You see, we've made our God too small in our eyes. That's our problem. God's dream for us is big and it's special. Can we go to 1 Corinthians chapter 2 verse 9? And last week I closed with the script, which is powerful and which I want you to let it resonate with you till the beginning of the new year, when I will give you more to understand this morning. But it must be able to carry you throughout your life, this scripture. But as it is written, things which eye saw not, and ear heard not, and which entered not into the heart of man, whatsoever things God prepared for them that love him. No eyes have seen, no ears have heard, no mind can conceive what promises that God has in store for us. If you can only understand the scripture, you're going to live in that eternal prosperity. You won't live like a pauper, because God has so much in store for you. For those whosoever things God prepared for them that love him. Amen. This morning I want to go into 2 subsections. One being, learn to see what God sees. 1 Samuel chapter 16 verse 9. Learn to see what God sees. If ever I'm going to give you something that you take home and that will be able to bless you throughout this festive season and beyond, is what I'm going to share with you now. Then Jesse made Shammah to pass by and said, neither had Jehovah chosen this. Like I said to you, Jesse's sons that were lined up, they looked like kings. They had the fittings and the strappings of individuals that were kingly in nature. But when the prophet, when he came here, he saw all of these things and he said, God had neither chosen any one of these. And you know what? It must be really discouraging when you are standing there knowing that you're going to be a king, and then all of a sudden the prophet comes and says, Nathan says, God wants to have nothing of this. Where's this other ruddy fella that you've got hiding? You see, God, whilst everybody sees a shepherd boy, God sees a king. Whilst you are seeing just doom and gloom, God sees a bright future ahead. Whilst you are setting up yourself for failure, God is preparing your family and your household to blossom and to actually get into a place of such eternal bliss and peace. You see, the problem with us is that we have got into a place where we just see the outward exterior of man and think that's exactly what God is looking at. And even we learn in the scriptures that man looks at the outward and God looks at the heart. So you're seeing that already there's a disparity between us and God in what we're looking at. You see, I said this many times over. I just find this so awkward if I'm standing in the room with staff members, and I see that, and it's very prevalent, and it might be prevalent in other race groups, but I see it's so obvious amongst the black staff of ours. It's because they are so into fashion that when another girl walks into the room, they could be how busy, but they would do that. I don't know if you experience that. I don't know why they measure them up, why they size that outfit, what they do about it. I'm just not sure. And then some of them roll their eyes in the process. And that's even more embarrassing. I just pray that the other person is not looking at it. Because what I'm seeing, I actually don't like, because it's as if they've judged them from the head to the toe. You see, we've become like that ourselves. We judge everything at face value. We don't see greatness beyond that clothing. We don't see that there's a CEO walking in there. This little girl that is so humbly walking there could be the next CEO. We don't see that. What we're seeing is, hey, this girl she's got some style, but don't like her shoes. She's a bit farmish with the hairstyle. And we look and we judge these things, these exterior things, and we miss out the glory that is inside that package. We really miss out. And so we need to learn to see what God sees. For hundreds of years, whilst Israel had what they had, they had a glorious destiny. This group of people was God's chosen. They had it for themselves. They had lovely palaces. They had limitless wealth. They just abound with all the trappings of good blessings. But the amazing thing is, I don't think they even saw that. They didn't realize that there was a blessing that was promised to them, that God would not revoke. God would just let them have it because He promised that to Abraham. So they carry that lineage of blessing. And so, they say, when you're too close to something, you can't see the wood from the trees. You know what I'm talking about? When you're close to somebody, like just this weekend, one of my elders in Durban, he had a stroke. He came home, his wife looked at him. She didn't know anything was wrong with him. He told her something's wrong because his speech started to slur. She looked at him and she says, nothing's wrong. You see, when you're too close to something, you can't see the wood from the trees. And so, what she did was, only when he started to slur, and then they decided to get a bit worried. Then they took him to the hospital. A similar case. For hundreds of years, only one man saw Israel as God saw them. And we're going to find that in Numbers chapter 24, 2-4, verses 2-4. And then we're going to go look at 8 and 19 thereafter. And Balaam lifted up his eyes, and he saw Israel dwelling according to their tribes. And the Spirit of God came upon him. And he took up his parable and said, Balaam the son of Beor saith, and the man whose eyes was closed saith, he saith, who heareth the words of God, who seeth the vision of Almighty, falling down and having his eyes open? God bringeth him forth out of Egypt. What's that other word? He hath, as it is were, the strength of the wild ox. He shall eat up the nations, his adversaries, and he shall break their bones in pieces, and smite them through with his arrows. He couched, he lay down as a lion, and as a lioness, who shall rouse him up? Who shall rouse him up? Blessed be everyone that blesseth thee, and cursed be everyone that cursed thee. And Balak's anger was kindled against Balaam, and he smote his hands together. And Balak said unto Balaam, I called thee to curse mine enemies, and behold, thou hast altogether blessed them 3 times. Therefore now flee thou to thy peace. I thought to promote thee unto great honor, but lo, Jehovah hath kept thee back from honor. And Balaam said unto Balak, spake I also not to thy messengers that thou sentest unto me, saying, if Balak would give me his house full of silver and gold, I cannot go beyond the word of Jehovah, to do either good or bad of mine own mind. What Jehovah speak, that will I speak. And now behold, I go unto my people, come, and I will advertise thee what this people shall do to thy people in the latter days. And he took up his parable and said, Balaam the son of Beor said, and the man whose eyes was closed said, he said, who heareth the words of God, and knoweth the knowledge of the Most High, who seeth the visions of the Almighty, falling down and having his eyes open. Verse 17. I see him, but not now. I behold, I am, but not nigh. There shall come forth a star out of Jacob, and scepter shall rise out of Israel, and shall smite through the corners of Moab, and break down all the sons of tumult. We can stop there. You know what the irony of this entire story is Balak brings Balaam as one of his prophets, is a false prophet, brings him to prophesy, use his God's wisdom, prophesy against the children of Israel. God opens the eyes of Balaam and gives him these words, And if you see, he says, the one whose eyes are opened, the one whose eyes that haven't seen these things, who never knows exactly the expanse of this God and the ability for this God to do great and mighty things. He says, well, I just want to tell you something. This is what Jehovah said. He's going to crush your armies into pulp. Putting it mildly. Now, you know the story of how Balaam was so upset with him and chased him home. Because he said, even if you promise me kingdoms, I don't want it. I won't say what Jehovah didn't say to me. He will not stop those words coming out of my mouth. So, here's the thing. Church, we want to see what we want to see. And when God is busy working through us and starting to show us the vision before us, we are keeping our mouths shut. The other day I asked this congregation, I said in closing, somebody, please speak. Please pray for us. Close this meeting in prayer. What happened to your mouths? Got sealed. Why? Because I said pray. I would to God that there's a time coming. Man, we're not going to ask people to open in prayer. They're going to just burst out in prayer. When we would come and there would be a prophetic word that would come out in this church, because people listen to the voice of Jehovah. People see through the eyes of God in this house. Too long did we get comfortable in, okay, now that we put air conditioning now, so it's making it even more comfortable for you to become comfortable. But I would to God that you would be restless, that you would be able to go out and get excited about the things of God that will bring such joy. I said your preparation, when do you come to church? You actually come to church on Saturday night. When you come here on Sunday morning. You're not partying Saturday night and come to church on Sunday morning. You're already coming to church on Saturday night. That means you've prepared your hearts for what God is going to do Sunday morning. Church, we need to see things through the eyes of God. You see, what Israel saw, if any natural eye would see, they would see motley tents scattered in this wilderness. That's all they would see. In the meantime, what they were missing the palatial structures that God had already ordained for them. And you know, it is wrong for us to be able to just see with our natural eyes. May the scales of your eyes start to fall off, that God may be able to reveal His power and His glory. May we forever be in a place that we don't treat any day like any day. We treat it like one day where we have the opportunity of practicing our greatness on the face of the earth. You know, I spoke to somebody the other day. They said, no, I feel very down. It's not a great day for me. Yes, it will be down and not a great day for you because you've spoken to your soul and say, be depressed. God wants you to say every day is a great day because He's given it to you. And every day you have the nature in you to be able to bring forth greatness. I said to you, one of the waivers quite early in my message, when I first started this message, I said, please understand one thing. This message, it is not a prosperity gospel. I don't believe in a prosperity gospel. But if you can grab the prosperity that I speak about, you will never be poor. I'm not asking you to drive Mercedes-Benz and BMWs when you can't afford a Mini. But what I'm saying is, when you have the mentality to own greatness, what is a Mercedes-Benz? I don't know if you understand me this morning. Man, you just making God too small in your eyes. God's dream for you is special. Man is consistently looking at the tangible. And remember, what is faith? Faith is the things hope for. The evidence of things unseen. So you're applying tangible sight to faith. You walk by. What does the Bible want you to do? Walk by faith and not by. Are you with me this week? Are you understanding what I'm saying? Because the moment you start to walk by sight, you walk in your own sight. And you will just see, you will never see what even a prophet, a false prophet, how God spoke to him and gave him the truth, that he saw the glory of Israel. He saw the power and he saw the entirety of God's blessing. What God sees in us is very different to what man sees. That's the funny part. David was chosen the same way. Whilst everybody was denouncing the ability for him to be chosen as a king, God chose him from the field as a shepherd boy and made him a king. We must learn to see what God sees, and then God will turn that vision into reality. I'm a living example of this. I said to you, the first day that God took me into a brand new car parking lot, I said to my Christian friend that came with me to choose his car as well, and I said, this day is the greatest turning point in my life. I said, if you ever knew me, I was always one of those people that actually only had the guts to go as far as the used car lot. And today I stand here, and the guy says, so what car would you want to buy? And I said, can I design my own car? Okay, I know you got the shell, but can I tell you what I want in that car? I just don't want just an ordinary Opel Astra executive. I want the top of the range. You see what I was saying? Is don't limit me. You don't make me see what you can give me. Let me see what God can give me. And from henceforth, I share this message, but for those of you who just came today, I should have taken some pictures of that car. If I showed you my previous cars, you would say, impossible, Pastor. I had a car that was fully air conditioned. And I didn't mean it had nice, beautiful air coming through air conditioning in the car. It came from the big holes, gaping holes. I said you can put your hand through it and change the gears from the outside. I am not exaggerating. Where you wanted to see body, you saw rust, you saw holes. I drove the car. It took me from A to B. It took me to the college. And today, I have a car, I can talk to it. I mean, there's so many bells and whistles that it has. And I'm saying, Lord, is this what you have in store for me? Is there something greater than this? And the answer is yes. If you think this is much, this is too little. When the prophet spoke over my life and said, for the first time I heard these words, he said, Pastor, you'll be going overseas. And I thought, I didn't have 2 farthings to rub together. Where am I going to afford a ticket? That year I went overseas. You know what? God is not a liar. That's why I don't want you to make yourself smaller when you should be greater. Anyway, let me just finish this message. I know it's going to bless you. Give me 5 minutes and I'll round it up for you. The last thing I want to share with you from this example is do not lose your heart for war. Do not lose your heart for war. You see, whilst the enemies were fighting, David was sitting on his balcony with suntan lotion on. Okay, they didn't have suntan lotion those days. But he had his body well oiled. He was sitting and basking in the sunshine. He lost his heart for the war. If you read the book of Samuel and read every encounter about David, David was a warrior through and through. They sang David's praises, therefore Saul got jealous. I mean, they were singing songs about Saul just dropping one, David was dropping thousands. He killed a lion and a bear with his bare hands. Man, he was just powerful, this young man. And here he was languishing in the sunshine. Content that he had everything. And church, that's the most dangerous place to be. Total contentment without God giving you that contentment. You know, when you get content, you sit behind the TV, man, got the remote control in your hand, you in control. And you're checking the sports channel. And you're checking the action movies. And the whole day comes and goes and you've done nothing. Meantime, there's things breaking down in the house. There's a portion of the curtain that hasn't been pushed properly, and you just want to be content. You just want to be lackadaisical. So you just want to be that place. Just want to enjoy the comfort of where you've come. Nothing wrong with comfort. Nothing wrong with relaxation. You need it in your body. You work the whole week. You deserve it. But where the complication comes in is when you have got too comfortable. And when things are falling down. Have you ever been to a mechanic's house? His car is the one that doesn't work. Have you been to a carpenter's house, a guy who does cupboards and all the doors are hanging in his house? Eh? I'm telling you this out of experience. I had an uncle. He was a master craftsman. When he would take you to houses and show you the houses that were gorgeous. I mean, you would eat your heart out just looking at the design and the finish. This man was a master craftsman. When I used to go to his house for holidays, I used to fix his drawers. It's funny, right? Contentment with just doing nothing. When you lose your heart for war, there is no ambition. There is nothing that drives that ambition. There's nothing that will take you to a place that will make you at night think about what you need to do in the morning. You will sleep like a lazy log till 12 o'clock in the day. People have already gone, some of them gone to work and came back already, and you're still sleeping. When you lose your heart for war, these things like lack of ambition, lack of being able to do what is necessary will take the back seat. You know, I ask myself, Lord, where is the hero that I read about? the man that vanquished armies. Where is that guy? Oh, he's there sitting in the balcony. And guess what he's doing? Instead of worrying about his men dying in the war, he's busy watching a woman take a bath. They say, an idle mind is the devil's workshop. An idle mind is the devil's workshop. You've got enough time to murder in that mind. See what David did. He committed murder. He took another man's wife, he put him in the front line, let him get murdered. That's what Nathan came to tell him. You that man. You that man. You saying that man deserves terrible punishment? You the guy should be punished. Because that's what you did. You led this man to slaughter so that he can die, that you can take over his wife. And be careful that when you yourself lose your heart for war, your preoccupation will be for other things. Church, why do you think we want to engage you so often to come to a church service? Why do you think that we just do this for fun? Why do we say that the more regular you and closer you get to God, get involved in the service of the church, make sure that you get everything in control? You know, I heard Brother Don and Patricia say, Pastor, we brought the maid here and she came and cleaned up. We got her to set the chairs, we had to reset the chairs. We set something, she reset that, and we had to reset it. Now they're coming to Durban. They had to make sure that the church is 100% the way it should look. They could say, I'm going to Durban. I mean, Pastor can come here and sort his own life out. Why do we tell you to get involved in the service? Why do we need for you to come in and be part of this thing? Because you must not lose your heart for the war. The moment you sit there and you worry about your economical situation, you're finished. Already you're getting depressed. You're sitting at home and you're worrying about the school fees that you have to pay in January. Man, that's enough to drive you to drink. Sorry, I don't encourage that, but it's a matter of speaking. It generally happens. Why? Because your mind is too idle. You need not to lose your heart for war. How many of you know that we don't fight a physical battle? What does the Bible say? Who are we fighting? We're not fighting one another. But guess what? In churches, man, we got the greatest of fighters, fighting their brothers, arguing against the precepts of what being taught here, trying to justify whether we're going the right way or wrong way, trying to justify why there's empty chairs. Man, that is not our fight. We fight against principalities, powers that are in high places. And you got time to lounge in your balcony? When you lose your heart for war, you lost everything. When you're not fighting on your knees, when you're not fighting the devil who's trying to rob you of the destiny that God gave you, you are going to lose the battle. And that's why I'm inciting you this morning to become a fighter. Not for the wrong reasons, but have a vision, man, that you would not get to the place where you're fat, where your muscle is turning to fat because you're lounging, where your brain is actually also developing some fat cells instead of developing brain cells. So keep your mind active in the things of God. Fight principally against all those principalities. Make sure that, I've just been to a wedding. I was asked, Pastor, how long is the wedding service going to last? The wedding service is going to last 1 hour. If you don't have any other attachments to it, maybe if you've got other attachments, maybe another half an hour, like lighting candles and releasing doves and all that. I mean, people go crazy when they get married. So, but if it's a normal service, 1 hour, and I think I did it within the 1 hour. Now, how long did the reception last? They never asked that question. I think we must have had supper, what time? 9 o'clock. The point I'm trying to make here, you want to limit the things that is the main thing in your life, which is the marriage ceremony. You want to give that, if I could see they wanted me to, unfortunately I don't do that. Hit and run, I don't do hit and run. So, you want to leave the things that don't matter and give it more impetus. That's the point I'm driving home, church. I'm giving you these examples so that when you have a wedding, you'll know exactly how to do it. I'm joking. Some of you that are married already. So, but when your kids get married, at least you'll take some tips from what I'm saying. But the fact of the matter is, when I apply that principle, don't lose your heart for war. Know who's your enemy when you're fighting this war. Don't go and fight your family and friends. Man, please. Those people you need to get close to. And your enemy is closer, by the way. So the fact of the matter, in this entire encouragement of David, there's lots of lessons to be learned. And we wonder why, when David said, Lord, you know that I wanted to build a temple for you. And the reason God didn't allow David to build a temple, allowed his son Solomon to build the temple, was David shed a lot of blood. Unduly. If he shed it for the right reason, then God would have forgiven him. But he shed it for lots of wrong reasons. That blood was crying out against David. And so this morning, I bring this message to a close. And I say to you, take the meat from this message. There's so many gems that I passed on to you this morning. Take it. Apply it to your life, because God's got a dream for you. And his dream is not small. His dream is big. God's got so many things in store for you, but you're selling him short. Look through God's eyes at look at your life and say, Lord, celebrate what God has given you thus far. And you'll see whatever you've got is just little, because God's got much, much more. Let's bow for prayer. Father, thank you this morning. You have a dream for us. You have a special dream for us. You have things in store for us, Lord, that with our earthly might, we will never bring to pass. But Lord, when your favor comes upon us, all these things your word declares in Matthew 6:33, and all these things shall be added unto you. Lord, we draw strength from that word. Help us not to lose our heart for war. Help us, Lord, to stand steadfast even during this time. Help us to know, Lord, that you are our God, our Savior, our Master. The one, Lord, that we so readily, Lord, revere in this house. Bless us right now. Use us, Father. And Lord, give us an expected end. Lord, with a bright future and every blessing, every conceivable blessing you have in store for us. Touch us now, Father. Make a way. Be with us. In Jesus' name. Amen. I trust that you've been blessed by the word this morning. How many of you, don't raise your hands.